So my name is Trey Simonton. I am just actually joined a company in town called Accruent. I'm a strategic account executive, enterprise software company, and I love a lot of the conversations we've had over the last couple of days. But as I was watching Debbie's presentation yesterday, we dug really deep into discovery. And I've seen people ask a lot of questions. And one of the interesting things is we didn't talk about some of the great tactics for listening. So I just thought I'd really quickly share two, I'll call them listening hacks. And the first one is, in a day where we are so used to pulling up Evernote, in a day where we're used to using OneNote and typing into our computers, one of the best things we can do to be genuine in a conversation is pull out your moleskin and ask the executive you're speaking with, ask the prospect you're speaking with, can I take notes? It's a genuine way of engaging these executives, and it shows that you're a student of the conversation. Watch how it changes the way they interact with you as you're taking notes. And you got to take notes, for the love of God. Don't just take it out of the page. But as you're taking notes, they will nurture you. They will give you feedback. They will open up. And then once you hear what you're looking for, once you have some more information, show them you've been listening by saying, hey, can we double click on this? Can you tell me a little more? And you will be surprised how this opens up to discovery. And not all the questions have to be around your company. The bulk of the questions need to be around what their initiatives are and their tactics are for the year. The second one is a place that I caught myself about 6 years ago. I'd gone to work for a company called Weiss. In fact, Scott is an alumnus of Weiss. It's a social media company that captures ratings and reviews. And I was brought in as an enterprise executive again to ask questions, to dig in on some specific accounts. Weiss is really good in the retail space, not as good in financial services. So I was asked to take the lead in a meeting with Liberty Mutual. We go on site, we're going through, I'm asking my probing questions, doing my trap setting questions, really trying to show that I know what I'm talking about. And I thought we had a great meeting. At the end, a sales leader, a guy named Tony Capasso, came up to me and he said, Trey, you're clearly a great enterprise sales reps, but I'm going to ask you to hold yourself accountable to listening. And the way I want you to hold yourself accountable is take your moleskin, open it up, and during a 30-minute meeting, bite your tongue 6 times. During a 1-hour meeting, bite your tongue 11 times. And put a tick down in your moleskin. And if you go back through and you look at my moleskin, you'll see these little ticks during the 30 minutes and 1-hour meetings. Now here's what's interesting. You may think you're listening really well, but to Tony's point, in the time it takes you to literally put a line on the page, a client will start to say one more thing. We'll share a little bit more. We are trained to ask all the right questions. What we don't realize is an entire 30-minute conversation can take place based on one question. So just 2 little quick sales hacks, or listening hacks I thought I would share as part of the presentation. So as I mentioned, I'm a strategic account executive. What's great is I have David up here as well, who's a sales leader, who's coaching sales reps. And one of the things about myself is I am big on line of sight. I can't just know I'm trying to hit $1 million number or a $2 million number. I need a way to set my goals. I need a way to break that down. So what you see here is a deal horizon. This concept that trying to hit a number, and I always recommend, if you have a $1 million quota, set your goals for what you're trying to achieve at 150, 200% of that number, and build your daily, your weekly activities off of that. So in this case, in this 1 year, my quota was 1.3 million. I set my goal for the year at 2.2 million. At this point, I had consistently been 160, 180% of my number for the last couple of years. I wanted to literally ignore my quota. I wanted to focus on my stretch goals and build on my activities for myself, my SDR, my marketing team around it. And the last couple of days have been great because everybody keeps talking about their muscle memory, their best practices. I think to be really good at your job, you also have to be a student of data. And you have to figure out things like, if you look over here, what was my average deal size last year? It was $100,000. So if I'm going to start breaking things out in extra large, large, medium, and small deals, it needs to be based off of real data. It needs to be based off of products. And what was interesting is when I watched Trong yesterday, he has one account. But what did we see him do? He broke out different lines of business, different areas of products, and he has a way of doing it just like this. David, you shared with me, you call the concept of extra large, large, medium, and small.
Singles, doubles, triples, home runs.
Right?
Like for instance at ADP, I sell and my team sells a handful of distinct solutions. One of them is RPO, recruitment process outsourcing. Those are like $500,000 to $1 million deals. Then we have our applicant tracking solution. Those are about $100,000-ish deals. Then you have background screening, which are like $50-ish thousand deals. So we hold ourselves accountable to closing about 12 background screening deals a year, about 1 applicant tracking system deal a quarter, and then 1 to 2 really large deals annually in the RPO space. So that's kind of how it breaks down into these different buckets.
So what are you hearing? Sales is clearly math, right? It's literally breaking down your activities and making sure you're doing everything to roll up to this math. So for me, when I start out the year, if I'm going to make a plan, I don't want to be caught not achieving all my activities 6 months into the year. I want to get focused. So what I did is I broke out where I thought extra large deals would land. That's not to say I'm not going after $500,000 deals or $1 million deals, but let's start with a $300,000 number. And I've consistently been able to do 3 to 5 of those a year. There's a lot different activity that goes into selling a $500,000 deal than there goes into selling a $30,000 deal. And I want to hold myself accountable for developing those. When I did the math and started to attribute $300,000 deals, $535,000 deals all the way down, look at what, ironically, my numbers rolled up to, $2.2 million. Well into accelerators on a $1.3 million number. And with all the questions about how do I know where to go to make money, go to a place where your effective commission rate is very high and the client has, or the company has the ability to accelerate on your number. Listen, a lot of sales reps are going to be very happy with hitting their quota. Where you're going to make your money is being well in the clouds, way over your number. Then what I started doing is I started mapping those to the clients that either I prospectively believed could do those numbers, and part of that is research. What are the trends that are going on? Are they losing in the marketplace? The grocery industry, what are they afraid of? Amazon. The retail industry, what are they afraid of? Amazon, right? God bless them. So I looked at those trends to see where I could get some wins. And ironically, many of these numbers didn't come in at the exact amounts that I held. I have actuals as I started to bring in numbers, and I track where I am from a shortfall area to get to my stretch goal. On the far right, what you'll see are backfill deals. Pipeline cures all ills, right? Pipeline makes you a better negotiator. I cannot bank everything on the deals that I think are going to come in because companies go out of business. Toys R Us, bankruptcy, right? You got to think ahead. You got to develop that backfill. And then the other big thing that I've heard again and again here, and I just loved it. I would just sit over in the corner and grin as I heard Kyle say this, as I heard other people say this. I take the spreadsheet and I hand it to my manager. And I say, hold me accountable. Because the reality is, a $500,000 deal is a 9 to 12 month sales cycle. If I haven't done everything to start to engage those executives early, there's no way I'm getting that deal, right? When I was young, I used to be nervous about meeting with my sales manager. I used to be worried about them peeling apart my deal. Now that I've done this for many years, that's the first thing that I ask for. I've learned to live in fear of all the things that I'm missing, and I want them to hold me accountable to that. So give it to them, share it with them, tell them what you want to do, and man, let them pick you apart. Let them tell you it's not going to happen. Let them tell you you aren't doing all the right things. And then go do all the things that they're recommending you do. And you're going to be very likely to hit those stretch goals and put up some big numbers.
That's great.
From a sales management perspective, you do something similar, right?
No, this is fantastic. I mean, what I often look at is, so I have $1 million quota, and I split deals with lots of different people. So what I often look at is if my close ratio is 25% on $1 million quota, then I need a 4x quota to just hit goal. If I want to hit 200% of goal, that means I need an 8x quota. So what I'm always holding myself accountable to is about a pipeline of roughly $8 million. That's broken down kind of with your singles, doubles, triples, home runs, and how you're going to get there. So if my pipeline ever dips below 8 million, that's when I start getting into that mode of, all right, what do I need to do to get it back up there?
I think I asked you this question before when you showed it to us, but Charles Schwab is a pretty big company. Why wouldn't they be in the target, the higher category? So I guess to you, Dave, you know, when you're looking at all these companies,
Yeah.
how are you like, oh, that's a single, that's a double, that's triple? At what point are you putting a dollar value next to these company names?
Where they're at in the buying process, what they're looking to purchase. So like Charles Schwab, huge company. I would love to sell them RPO for outsourcing, you know, all the things that they do, but they may be super mature within that function, and I may not have an opportunity in the near term to displace that function. But what I may be able to do is get a single here with something, get my foot in the door over here with something, continue to build that relationship, and then gain wallet share over time. So that may, in that instance, be a single or a double here, but maybe on my 2-year or 3-year plan, that's a home run that I'm working towards. So it's kind of, you know, thinking through the buyer's journey and how you can align to that, and you know, the different facets of things that they're going through and how you can, you know, best help them achieve their goals.
So, I mean, is that after like the first meeting, second meeting, third meeting? I mean, you know, every single company on here has a dollar value next to it. So where are you, you know, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Definitely, like understanding like what that company has. But I mean, where are you actually putting a dollar value next to it? Because I also noticed that, yeah, yours, you just labeled that set prices. Yours are a little bit more varied.
So it's a great question. One of the things I see a lot is people think of Charles Schwab as a prospect. The reality is Charles Schwab has about a dozen different divisions that each can be prospects. In my world, when I worked at Bazaar Voice, we sold to digital marketing managers, but there were about a dozen different stakeholders that were going to factor into the decision. We had a Q&A platform, and it was all about customer care and what they were going to sign up for, and the business case became different. So what I learned to do very well is to coordinate with my SDR, and we'd have tables, and we'd line item out every one of the 12 different lines of business, and about 4 of them were our sweet spot. And then we'd line them out the 12 different roles that I wanted to talk to on the phone. A lot of them weren't going to be champions. A lot of them weren't going to be EBs. But a ton of them were influencers and their stakeholders. And that let me help out my SDR to hit their numbers. But it also let me target what gave me a toehold. Was it a $30,000 solution? Or was I on a 2-year sales cycle to do a $500,000 engagement? And so what you're seeing, sadly, in many cases was a product of negotiation, right? I would love to tell you that I could give them a list price and they would take it. But at the end of the day, what I would see is as I would start to talk and start to align with budget, some of the pricing changed. Sure. And I may start with a placeholder where it says projected, but the reality was the subject of adding services, adding value, or procurement doing their job and taking a pound of flesh, taking that money down.
And to answer the other piece of that question is, when are you determining that? Yep. That's often the importance of a really strong discovery or analysis piece. I mean, you can often pinpoint within the first meeting a rough idea of what they're looking for, why they're looking for it, and ballpark, okay, I'm gonna make sure I focus my analysis on these questions to fine tune what I think this is gonna be. So within the first 1 to 2 meetings, depending on your sales process and sales cycle, you should be able to determine ballpark, this is what the account's worth.
I mean, is that the same for you, Trey? Because it sounded like you were like looking at like roles, right? So if I get this person on the phone, then I know that this person's probably gonna be more interested in this type of product, or?
I think it's a mistake to ever go in and ask somebody based on their role to buy a certain product. The reality is the way you sell something to somebody is based on the value to them. And ironically, they may be in a position where they're going to influence a deal more than they are going to actually be to saddle up that budget. So I try to find need, and then I try to make sure that our products can align with those needs.
For a second meeting too, probably.
Sure.
Guys, get closer to the mic, please.
Sounds good. I think this spreadsheet's awesome. It's total side note, not relevant. Did you create this in Google Sheets? Because
We have it in Google Sheets, we have it in Excel.
Oh, dude, okay.
Email Scott@top1.fm, he sends it to you.
Oh my gosh, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. No offense to all the Microsoft people in the crowd. I like Microsoft, but Google Sheets is awesome. How often are you looking at this? Is this like is this something that's in front of you multiple times a day? Is it driving your daily activities? How do you, because I find I just get, and maybe I'm the only one here who struggles with this, where you get sucked into the weeds so much that you realize I haven't taken a big picture look at my deals in a long time, which is pathetic and not how it should be, right? So how often do you intend to, and how often do you actually let this guide everything that you do?
I personally, if I'm completely honest, look at this once a month. The reality is, as many accounts as there are up here, I have to have a sales force. I have to have something that helps me manage the day-to-day. I probably can get my head around about 20 deals at any given time. And if something falls out, there's a new one that comes in. I have challenged my leaders to look at it at least quarterly, but what's funny is they'll ask me on a weekly basis during our one-on-one, hey, are you progressing here? Because you have to give leaders something to talk to you about, right? You have to give them something to coach you. Yeah, they'll find something. Give them something to coach you about. Show them what your goals are and say, hey, I'm falling behind. And I had a great one about Q3 where I said, man, I have way over-indexed on small and medium deals. Need you to hold me accountable to focus on some of the large deals.
And I'm a little old school. I still use those books, and I still actually use Post-it notes for a lot of conversations and for reminding myself to do things. But I've got a whiteboard in my office. Whiteboard in my office is probably about this big, and I've broken out the whiteboard into my deal stages. So I have, there was a few people I was eating dinner with last night. I showed them a picture of my whiteboard. But I'll have, first time visit, analysis, demo, alignment phase, late stage contracting phase. I'll have each of those phases broken out on a whiteboard. So those go across the top, deals go down like this. And I'll have every single opportunity that I'm actively working aligned to each of those categories. And real time, every single day I wake up, go into my office, drink my coffee, look at my whiteboard. That guides a lot of what I know and remember of things I need to be doing, the follow-up I need to be doing. And I'm actively, as those are progressing through stages, erasing, writing on the whiteboard, and moving them along. It also gives you really neat gap analysis. So like, if I'm in a position and I notice that first-time visits only have a line about here, but my demo's here, my alignment's here, my contracting's here, well, man, I've got a lot of people that I need to move forward in or out of the pipeline, and I need to be doing a lot of prospecting. Or if the pipeline looks like this, which is what it should look like, I know that I've got a healthy funnel. So doing something like that and creating that for yourself allows you to have some personal accountability of where you are within your pipeline.
So kind of ironic because this is pretty well aligned to what I was going to ask, but what are kind of like the maybe top 3 things that you live in on a daily or weekly basis? Because I know for me, when management tries to introduce new tools, sometimes it can be overwhelming and you can really only manage a few that you live out of in the day. And I like the whiteboard example, and I used to actually just use a scratch piece of paper because I'm just like kind of scattered and old school like that. But what are those things that you guys use? That example was awesome. I love that. Anything else that you can point to that you guys use?
So Salesforce is big, and where Salesforce or any type of package like that is strong is getting the data, because you want to know what your close rates are. How can you truly set up goals, try the pipeline generation each and every day, right? You also want to get into how many emails do you need to send, how many phone calls do you make, and if you're working out, you're eating healthy, this is the same type of thing. If I'm true to myself, probably 3 days out of the week, I'm up at 5 a.m. and I send 30 emails. And I coordinate them and I copy my SDR, I just make them a part of all of it. And I make 8 phone calls. And not all those calls are tied to what's happening here. They're accounts that are in my product set or something along those lines. This I use to manage my focus. And my boss will tell you, Trey travels more in June, July, and August than any other rep in the company. Because I believe for those large deals, the planning is not taking place in September, October, November. The budgeting is taking place during the summer when maybe people are traveling, maybe the office isn't full, and they have time to sit down and really talk through a big conversation. So those are some of the things that I do to align with some of those bigger deals. And then obviously the combination of Salesforce, Outlook. Sometimes I use Outlook tasks. Some people do sticky notes. But then for me, it definitely goes all back to what's my day in and day out activity to make sure I have the pipeline to keep flushing into this program.
So I may have heard this wrong, but I think one of you commented earlier that the larger deals you spend more time on. They just take more time. So with our organization, I get some feedback from our reps that, they're not focusing on the smaller deals because they say that it takes just as much time to invest on a small deal or a large deal, so the ROI is bigger on the large deal, so it kind of just drifts down. I've got my own opinion, but I would like your guys' opinion.
I would ask if they have data to back that up.
Yeah.
And I I'd seek to define what a small deal and a large deal is, and how complex it is, how many buyers are involved, all those different things. I mean, at the end of the day, if that's truly true, then do they have enough large deals in the funnel to hit their goal? If they do, well, peace, go sell a bunch of large deals. But if they don't, then you're going to need to build those singles, those doubles, those smaller deals to keep you healthy as you
To
work
fill
on the
those
largers.
gaps, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's my opinion for
I mean,
sure.
do you? I would ask a simple question: do you have peaks and valleys in your pipeline?
Yeah.
If you do, well, then you need to be doing something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very conveniently, the spreadsheet apparently was captured in Q3 or thereabouts, right? If you're starting out at the beginning of the fiscal year, what does this look like?
So there's two challenges that you want to think about, right? Ideally, if you have the long view, and I've heard a number of leaders talk about this, if you're looking at pipeline development, don't think about how you're going to be the top rep 1 year. How are you going to be the top rep 2 years, 3 years? And realize for those large deals, there's a very, very good indication that they're going to be carryover deals, that maybe they start small, maybe they pilot something, maybe one line of business does something before it expands out on the organization. So what you see here at the beginning of the year should be some carryover deals from the prior year. Now I'm sorry, go ahead. Now I have a different challenge. I'm going to work at Accruent. In fact, my first day is tomorrow. So I'm going in and I will spend a ton of time interviewing my SDRs. And my first question won't be, what are you going to do for me? It's going to be, how do I make you successful? How do I make you money? How do I get you a lot of leads? And then if I'm smart, I'll start looking at some companies that are capable of doing big deals, and I'll break out the lines of business. I'll help them identify the people, and then I'll let them do the heavy lifting, because they're the ones that want to get as many touches as possible. And then obviously, I want to do a broader outreach to people that are further along in the cycle, people that maybe have bought from Accruent before, and now are looking at the products I'm looking at, or the products that I'm selling. So for me, this will be very much, it'll align with some of the newer products that I'm selling, but it'll be very prospective, forward-looking, based on coaching from my peers.
I look at it as if we're all being really honest with ourselves, the pipeline should never have these like massive multi-deal swings to it. It's a living, breathing, it's your life. It's just, it's how you're looking at your business. So, you're going to take things out naturally, organically as they go, and you're going to add things in naturally, organically as they go, and it should be done in real time when those activities are happening. If it just like all of a sudden poof resets at the beginning of a year, I mean, how real was it to maybe begin with? So just food for thought.
So David, you talked about, there's absolutely an opportunity in the first year or two in territory to have it really, really produce.
Absolutely.
Trey, you're starting a new gig tomorrow. What does that 90-day plan look like? How are you maximizing that opportunity and setting yourself up that you're going to do it? Because I know you're thinking about it right now.
So it's interesting, 30, 60, 90 plans are a lot about spending the first 30 days getting educated, and that's absolutely what I want to do. But here's what's interesting. A lot of my selling motions are going to have nothing to do with what the products are that I sell. I'm going to get my territory, and 2 weeks in, I'm going to send out an email to every contact that we have, and I'm going to say, hi, I'm Trey Simonton. I'm your new account executive, and I would love 5 to 7 minutes to understand what your initiatives are this year so I can make some strategic recommendations. I put in a weird time. I'd love 10 to 12 minutes. Nothing big, but I want to show them that I am interested in them. And what I'm trying to do is get to a point where my prospects are already selling what their initiatives are for that year. They're telling me that story. It's that genuine outreach that has nothing to do with I have this product that can solve your problem. It's I want to know more about your problems and see if I can make some recommendations. So that'll happen very quickly in the first 30 days. Then at 60 days, I want to make sure that I have gotten the education, met with everybody in the organization, understood my influencers, and start to put some numbers in place. These are my numbers, but the reality is people have been selling these products at Accruent for years. I like to think I'm going to come in and take a fresh approach. I like to think what I'm going to do well is start to, based on their close rates, based on their average deal size, build an initial deal horizon. Start to get some focus on where I'm calling in. And I need to get some value-based messaging. I need to get some outreach. If I know I'm going to have to send 30 emails 3 days out of the week. I want to get inspired. I want to get passionate about it. But I don't want to do it with a 50-slide deck. I want to do it with a couple bullets, right? I want to do it with some initiatives that, again, that I see are based on trends in the industry. And if I can go into that motion in that 60 to 90-day period, now I have momentum. And we all know what that does for you.
I take a pretty tactical approach to it. I mean, if you think about it, your first month at a job, you get a little bit of leeway. You know, no one's going to say, "What have you closed lately?" Unless, I mean, some of them will, but they won't mean it. They won't mean it seriously. So I almost look at my first month in a new territory as like, that's my grace period. There's no going back. Once that month or two is gone, that's it. And if you haven't set yourself up for success in that very tight timeline, you are literally eating into the rest of your life in that territory. So I take those first, 3-4 weeks. I am just ferociously attacking my accounts and learning everything I can about them. So probably the first 2 weeks, I'm building my list. I'm trying to identify, like, how many people in here have a list of over 1,000 accounts? Anybody? A couple folks? 500 accounts? 100 accounts? Really small books? Okay, so that's good. You guys are fortunate. I know a lot of folks who have accounts or a number of accounts of 1, 2, 3,000. So you can maybe approach it differently. If you have lots of accounts, it's really narrowing down probably the top 50 to 100 that will lead to the vast majority of your revenue. If you only have about 10 accounts, then it's attacking them and mapping them in a sense that you know all of the contacts you're going to want to work with. You know, in theory, alignment to their individual buying motives and pain. You're reading their 10Ks, you're reading their annual reports. You're learning about their business. So at the end of that month of ramp up, you have done a lot of the legwork where you can actually start making progress very quickly in your territory. And that to me is the name of the game. That's how you ramp up fast as opposed to, eating into future time.
I kind of, just to comment on the SDR versus AE role, I don't think I ever heard you say the word SDR. You said SDR, and I think of someone like Dana. I don't think she ever uses the word SDR. They don't have that breakdown. What do you have that breakdown in your role?
SDR, sales development rep.
Yeah, versus the account executive, and what do you think
are those essentially just like prospect folks for you guys? That's all they do. Yeah. So yeah, we have what we call prospect ISMs, inside salespeople, or hunters, outside sales hunters. So I guess the industry terms for similar jobs.
Okay, so you'll say kind of universally there will be that role, and then there'll be the account executive role. There's no sort of, sometimes it's one and the same person.
You have hunter-farmer roles. You have people straight hunting, straight farming, account manager type. I mean, there's, I guess it depends on the needs of the organization. You'll have a lot of different, ways of splicing it. Yeah.
And you need to look at your skills, the people that complement your skills. So if you do well to have an SDR, somebody who's calling in and generating these phone calls and setting up these meetings, that plays to your skill sets. Others may be incredible hunters, be able to create this on their own. And a lot of times those are very high-paying positions because there's not a lot of cost associated with you and there's not a lot of risk to the organization.